Kamen Rider G is a 15-minute special made to celebrate the 50th anniversary of TV Asahi's debut, which is the network Kamen Rider aired on during the Heisei era and even into the Reiwa era. Being a special for the fans, the decision was made to make G a wine-themed Kamen Rider, which is very unique and leads to some fun catchphrases from our main character Goro. As for G's plot, Goro has been brainwashed by the organization known as Neoshade, who take TV Asahi's main building hostage to broadcast a bargain about their captured boss, but a woman he shares a connection to, Eri, happens to be there and eventually gets Goro to snap out of it and fight for justice as the warrior of love, Kamen Rider G. This is a really fun special with great effects work, choreography, and even a simple but touching story with Goro and Eri's love. It reminds me a lot of Kamen Rider Z-O and how that movie was able to squeeze everything amazing about Kamen Rider in 50 minutes, and while G isn't as masterful as Z-O, it's still really entertaining and gets the basic appeals of Kamen Rider down from the tragedy, emotion, and earnesty. Definitely worth a watch. Unfortunately, due to G also being a collaboration with the boy band SMAP, who are controlled by Johnnies, who are just terrible about media preservation and re-releases they're involved in, it's very unlikely for the special to be re-released or even see a full season of G. Though in 2019, he was officially recognized by the wider Kamen Rider franchise in Kamen Rider Gio's movie Over Quartzer. Speaking of cameos, let's talk about Kamen Rider Decade. Kamen Rider Decade is the 10th Heisei era Kamen Rider show and was purposely developed as a shorter season of Kamen Rider, being 31 episodes instead of the usual 40 plus the franchise is known for. This is due to a mandate from Bandai, the toy manufacturer for both Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, to make the upcoming Kamen Rider and Sentai shows air at different times of the year so their toy lines wouldn't compete with each other. To give you an example of why they would want to do that, let's say Sentai isn't doing much of its toy line one month, but Kamen Rider is, or vice versa. The other can swoop in with new toys without the fear of the sister show cannibalizing its sales potential. Before Decade, Sentai and Rider would air their new shows for the year around the same month. With the new schedule, Sentai would start at the beginning of the year while Rider would air its new show in September. To accomplish this plan, both Decade and its successor show Kamen Rider Double were being produced around the same time, so things were already hectic at Toei HQ just from the Kamen Rider side. It doesn't help that Decade's concept was a celebration of what Heisei Rider has accomplished up to this point, with the titular character and his crew traveling to the 9 Rider worlds of old to quote-unquote destroy them, which meant returning suits would be brought out, a couple of returning actors would make cameos, and there would be all sorts of chances to piss nerds off who care too much about continuity and power scaling over thematic depth. We'll talk specifics of the plot soon, but for now let's talk about the main character of Decade, Tsukasa Kadoya. He is a wisecracking, carefree traveler of worlds who's apparently destined to destroy them, but ends up helping them instead. I love how he balances quips and grand monologues, but I do wish he had a couple character flaws and struggles. I mean, I guess it makes sense that Tsukasa has a very go-of-the-flow type attitude, but at the beginning of the series they set up his amnesia subplot, but they never really resolve it. Though for what he is, I do like Tsukasa as this simultaneous beacon of hope and despair. The secondary writer, The End, is a cheeky thief and rival to our main hero, and outside of their cute rivalry, I don't have much to say on The End. Although I see what they did with their Kamen Rider names, The End and Decade. All we need is Kamen Rider of and we can make a full statement. Oddly, I think the character who got the most development and was more suited for the secondary writer position in this season is Yusuke Godai. Onodera! It's Yusuke Onodera, you muppet! He's an alternate reality Kuga who tags along on the endless journey. He unfortunately doesn't have stuff to do all the time, but when he does done stuff, I think it's really cool. I wish he had less butt of the joke moments and more moments to show how he's growing, because I think the build-up moments of Yusuke getting more comfy in his hero shoes, like in the world of Kiva where he helps out Kid Kiva to come to terms with his fears of becoming the king, and especially in the world of Agito arc where he meets an alternate reality version of his partner in crime from the world he's in, are great. I just wish Yusuke had more moments like these and that he had a better payoff in the ending of Decade. But we have to journey through the Decade before we reach its end, and I know a lot of people hate that Decade visits alternate reality versions of the seasons we know in his journey, but one, it's much easier to do than having to schedule returning veteran actors for a weekly TV show at a speedy production cycle, and two, I think the AR worlds are kind of brilliant in their execution. They take small ideas or characteristics from the original show they tribute and flesh them out into a fun what-if scenario that still gets what makes the original stand out. Kuga World's basically just Kuga with a new actor, Deno's World is just a movie promotion with the same cast as Deno, and Kiva's World is pretty basic, having a kid being given the burden of becoming king of the Fangires, but then we get weird yet interesting with Ryuki's World. Ryuki's World takes Kitaoka's aka Kamen Rider Zolda's occupation of a lawyer and expands it into the whole Rider War system, where riders fight to determine who's innocent and guilty in a trial, which is a fantastic recontextualization of Ryuki's morality struggle. It even gives us a new rider, Kamen Rider Abyss, which is a really cool suit, and I wish the Rider worlds got their own new Kamen Riders that fit with their seasons as well as Abyss. Blade's world has the characters explore the inner workings of the organization known as Board and how they function, with this whole tier system of what part of the business you'll work in, and having to be given permission to transfer to Kamen Riders when the original Blade Board exploded at the end of episode 1. While I'm not a big fan of how Chalice was done here compared to his nuances in Blade, the rest of the arc is a really funny look at what if a big company had control over the Kamen Riders. Wait. Unfortunately, Faiza's tribute is the weakest in this season, most likely due to it being the debut of Kamen Rider D End, but I think it's fine enough, the school setting that was a major tragedy in Faiz being the main location this time around, along with the conflict revolving around secrets and communication, which is a major element of Faiz. Agito's world plays with the fact that it was conceived as a sequel to Kuga initially, which leads to some great development for Yusuke. Kabuto captured Hiyori's struggles from the original show in a new context perfectly, along with having the charm of hearing Tendo's grandmother's words of wisdom in person. And then we have the Hibiki arc, which is the best apology for the second half of that show I could ask for. They got as much of the original cast as they could back for this tribute, but the characters recasted are still super compelling in what they do with them. Zaki and Ibuki schools initially start the arc having classic Rider versus Rider beef, but the love of Toridoki and Akira helps unite them together in unity, which is what the original Hibiki series was all about. Also, it's just so rewarding to see my favorite Hibiki character, Akira, thriving as a major player in this arc and getting to be an actual Kamen Rider instead of the weak sauce payoff she got in the second half. As for Hibiki the character, he has seemingly become a lazy mentor to Asumu, but only because he's secretly the big bad that Decade was searching for, so it's up to Asumu to stand up to his old master as the new Hibiki along with the rest of the Oni. Seeing the Oni and Decade come together for a big musical finish is such a beautiful payoff to the end of Hibiki's world. You could tell the production staff really wanted to get this arc right with how much love was poured into making it, and the fact that it was the last of the 9 Heisei worlds Decade traveled to. You see, the first 9 worlds of Decade make up around 20 episodes of the show, and that's where I'd say the series is at its best. However, then the show keeps going, and that's where most of my issues with Decade come along. From what I can gather, Decade didn't have a plan for its story, just ideas cobbled together on what would make the most cool anniversary show from a visual or episode by episode perspective. When it comes to tying everything together with the whole Destroyer of Worlds angle, the show just falls apart. We get episodes about Dian's original world, which uses actors from the Kamen Rider Blade movie for some reason, episodes about the Evil Rider's world, an admittedly fun crossover of Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, and a few Showa worlds of Black and Amazon. There's good moments in these episodes, but they feel so aimless and boring compared to the excitement of the first half. This isn't helped, as by the time we get to the Rider War promised at the start of the series, we end the show on one of the most anticlimactic cliffhangers ever that was supposed to be wrapped up in Movie War 2010. This isn't helped because Decade's segment in Movie War 2010 is utter nonsense. It has a good idea of Decade just giving up and becoming the actual Destroyer of Worlds, but it's told with the same aimlessness that the rest of the second half of Decade has, not helped by how Yusuke's arc ends. He finally turns into Black Eye's Ultimate Kuga in an attempt to defeat Tsukasa, something teased at the series beginning, but not only does he get Rising Ultimate Kuga, which is a garbage soup, he gets bitch slapped easily by Decade with little fanfare or excitement. Tsukasa does eventually go back to being a good guy by the end, but the whole thing just feels like I'm being told poorly written cliff notes of a story than seeing an actual story. This stunt of putting Decade's ending in Movie War 2010 actually got Toei in trouble with parenting groups of how plain greedy it is to tell kids, hey, you want to see the happy ending? Go see the movie. Which wasn't helped that the actual quality of Decade's ending in that movie was just so unconclusive. Despite it all, I still think Decade is a fun show, especially in the first half when they cared about writing the anniversary elements from a thematic and meta perspective rather than just pure visual remember this appeal, but it's definitely lower on my tier list of writer shows. Decade the character has arguably outlived his own show, appearing in a lot of specials and anniversary tie-ins for Kamen Rider since his show ended, and I think he's always a treat to see in them as this wandering bum with charisma, but I wish his show bothered to give a damn about his own story, because Decade has a great setup with no payoff at the end. It just sucks, because Decade in concept feels like a culmination of Kamen Rider's motif of using seemingly evil powers for the good of the world, with our main character being destined to destroy all the worlds and being a threat to the very existence of Kamen Rider itself. That's an amazing setup for an anniversary season that can go in so many compelling ways. I just wish the show had more to say with that setup in the end. At least Narutaki's a very funny guy. Does he do birthday parties?